The worst disruption in the wheat harvest in over a decade, folks. We got big news coming out of China, and this is not information that they really want to make known. They do not give out numbers. Any numbers that they do come out with are lies. But I need you to understand how big of an impact droughts and flooding are in the nation of China to the world's food supply. Did you know that China is the largest supplier of wheat in the world? They produce more wheat than any other country in the world. Rice. They produce more rice than any other nation in the world. We're talking big numbers. They're number 2 in production of corn of any nation in the world. Now, they're not big exporters of this stuff because they just eat all of it, you know. They export maybe a little bit, or actually, usually they still have to import more than what they produce. They have a tremendous amount of population, and it is hard for them to keep up with food production. But when they have a failure of their harvest, that means they're going to have to import a whole heck of a lot more food. And when we start looking at these numbers here, you're going to see how big of an impact this is going to be, because we're hearing some truly devastating news coming out of China. Let's jump into it. Welcome to the Poplar Report. I'm Steve Poplar. I'm an accountant by trade, and we cover on this channel news items that the mainstream media doesn't usually cover. They want to tell you how wonderful everything is or how everything is bad, but it's those guys' fault over there. We talk on this channel what is going on. I'm not going to sit here and give you a blow by blow of whose fault I think everything is. I think government is behind most of it, much of the time. And that's people on both sides of the aisle in the United States and every political party around the world, generally speaking, has their own problems out there. So when we talk about the one party in China, this is a pretty big deal, folks. So what's happening in China? It's kind of complicated and it's kind of mixed messages. It's almost like a sandwich. Southern China is having a serious drought and heat wave. And then the middle of China is getting pounded by way too much rain. And then on top of it, northern China is getting pounded by extreme temperatures and a drought up there as well. So now in China, wheat is in the upper northern territories more. In the center, they do a lot of rice and they also grow corn as well. And then in the south, they do a lot of wheat as well as rice and corn. I think maybe the corn's not so much down in the south. But all this to say that we have these bands that are being affected differently. The drought obviously is bad, but honestly, the flooding and the rain that's hitting the center of the country is actually truly devastating as well. Back in May, they had heavy rain in the center of China, and it caused the heads of the wheat to blacken, making it unfit for human consumption. They're saying, and this is actually what the quote was from, was they were saying, local officials were saying, worst disruption in the wheat harvest in decades. Big, big deal, folks. So how much rice and wheat and corn does China put out? I want to give you some sense of scale of how big of a producer they are in these fields. First off, with wheat, they produce 136 million tons of wheat per year, or at least they did last year. This year, it's looking like that's going to be slipping quite a bit. They're number one in the world. India is number 2. So 136 million tons. India, number 2, is at 105 million tons. 105. That's a pretty big jump down. In the United States, we produce a lot of wheat, don't we? 48 million tons. We barely make, we don't even make half as much wheat as China does. on a good year. And yet we're seeing their crops being devastated. Are the U.S. wheat crops being devastated this year? Yes, they are. They've been absolutely devastated, especially in the Kansas region, in the center of the United States, devastated. And then we're hearing out of China, they're losing a large portion of their crop due to heavy rain in May that is causing, I believe it's fungus and just problems with the wheat. If you know more about the blackened heads and stuff like that, let me know about that. I am not an agricultural expert, but what I do know is that they're saying that a lot of these fields are going to be losses. And then up north, the drought and the heat is killing the wheat. In China, in Beijing, they had just hit record temperatures. They haven't been at 40 degrees Celsius in Beijing, which is about 104 Fahrenheit, since 2014. It's a rare occurrence when they get up that hot. And it's June, folks. It's June. They've only been up there so many times before, and we're already hitting that right now. Eastern China, across the board, except for that band that goes across the center, is suffering heat waves. We're seeing record temperatures, especially for June, but then also for just, we're seeing some temperature breaks like in Beijing for all-time record news. So that, and then we have in March, go back all the way to March, and we had a drought warning issued for China. And this was particularly in northern China. And we're seeing that they're having to burn more coal in certain districts because their reservoirs are dropping. They don't have enough water for energy production, and so they are, and then in the center of the country, they're actually having to dump water out of the reservoirs to keep them from overtopping. It's crazy. They're having flooding issues in certain areas, and they are baking alive in other areas. They have animals, livestock is dying out in the fields because of the heat. They have listed out pigs, rabbits, and fish are dying from the heat exposure. Wheat fields in the center of the country flooded, while in the north and the south, drought, of course. So they produce a lot of wheat, and it's being impacted very, very negatively. But also rice. They're the number one producer of rice, 148 million tons of rice per year. That's a lot of rice. The number two is, once again, India, and they produce 120 million tons. But just to give you some perspective, number three is Indonesia at 35 million tons. There's a big step from number two down to number three. And then after that, you have a bunch of countries in the 30 million ton range. But China produces basically 5 times as much as you could say China produces as much rice, generally speaking, as the number 3, number 4, number 5, number 6, number 7 place countries. That's a lot of rice. So when we start talking about the rice harvest in China is being impacted by both the flooding and then in other areas the drought, the too much water and then the lack of water, hear me when I say this is going to have global consequences. And we keep talking about how we're having issues in North Africa, how we're having issues in the United States, how we're having issues even in India and in other countries. So when we come to China, we say this is one more big domino on a stack starting to fall. We are in trouble when it comes to food production. Now, corn, they're number 2. The United States is the largest producer of corn out there, but China's number 2. They produce 277 million tons of corn each year. Number 3 is Brazil, down at 125 million tons. So the step from 2 and 3 is big again, from 277 million tons in China down to 125 million in Brazil. Friends, we're not going to get a straight answer out of China, but when we see the purchases out of China picking up, as they start trying to go out in the market and start grabbing up as much wheat and rice and corn out there, we're going to see prices start moving pretty fast. When the Central Party planners in Beijing start realizing that they have a problem with the harvest this year, and they start going abroad to purchase up what they're going to need, we're going to see prices impacted severely. And with the grain deal going to be canceled from Ukraine shortly, in the next month, we're going to see there's going to be a lot less wheat out there on the market to be bought up. And when we see American coffers of wheat start getting drained rapidly, because honestly, there's no strategic wheat reserve. Some companies have some wheat stockpiled for their manufacturing purposes and such, but generally speaking, all that wheat's just very fluid. And when China's like, hey, we'll pay extra for it, they just dump it on a ship and just off it goes. And we could be very easily sitting here with our manufacturing companies trying to buy up wheat, and there's just no wheat in the United States to be bought. Friends, we have Central Party planners and we have national level purchasers out there thinking strategically about the purchases their nations need to make. And we really have nobody at the helm inside the United States protecting American interests and protecting American businesses to make sure that they have the supplies. We've become so arrogant and so complacent with the understanding that, oh, well, we'll be able to either produce it or we'll be able to buy it out there on the market. It's not a problem. We may get a little hiccup, but we'll always be able to find what we need. Other countries are saying, we don't need money for the wheat or the corn. We're just going to lock down exports. We're just going to make it so that we buy up other people's food because they're willing to sell it, and then we're just not going to sell it to anybody. India still has their rice export ban in place. We still see other countries that have food export bans on their countries in place. There are countries out there that are seeing serious problems with a number of different foodstuffs, and they are trying to protect themselves. Indonesia has limits on how much palm oil can be exported. The United States has zero limits on how much of anything can be exported out of the United States. We could go absolutely dry on commodities tomorrow. People could go into the commodity exchanges and just buy up all of our rice and wheat and corn production for the next year in just a few trading sessions. And okay, people will start to freak out when they see those kind of numbers. But when they let those contracts start expiring and they start trying to take delivery on them, there just won't be enough rice and wheat and corn to go around. We'll sell those things with the assumption that people would never want to actually take physical possession of those items. That's what we're doing. We're just kind of we're blundering into this crisis half asleep with no understanding of what we're getting involved in. We really do need leadership to make sure that American interests and other countries, if you're in another country, you need country leadership that are protecting your interests in these matters as well. We're probably going to have to learn the hard way. So make sure that you and your family are taken care of. If you either buy up food and stockpile it yourself, or whether you want to go out and purchase ready-made buckets and food packets and food kits, we partner with my Patriot Supply. You can find the link down below in the description down below, and I'll pin a comment down below. They have some good deals going on right now where you can get save some money on food packets, and if you want to buy a month's supply, 2-week supply, that kind of stuff. They're ready-made packages, and they're the best prices out there that are ready-made packages. So if you want to check them out, you can find them down in the description and down below. All right, folks, thanks so much for watching. If you want to check out another video from this channel, there's one right up here. And if you want to check out our webpage, there's a link to the poplarreport.com right here. It'll take you right to the website, and you can see it for yourself. All the news items that are coming up as they come out. A lot of breaking information there. Thanks so much for watching. Steve Poplar of the Poplar Report, out.